Hello, my dear students. Welcome to our English classes for today. Today it is Wednesday, and as you all know, we have two classes. Let's get introduced with the topics. The topic of the first hour is defining and non-defining relative clauses. The topic of the second hour is clauses of purpose and clauses of result. Let's continue with the learning outcomes of the first hour. Student identifies text types. Student completes exercises using defining and non-defining clauses and practices and presents clauses. The learning outcomes of the second hour are: student makes sentences using clauses of purpose, completes exercises using clauses of purpose and result, and practices and presents clauses of purpose and result. Before we start explaining the new grammar for today, let's continue and make a brief summary of relative pronouns. Pra, përpara se ne të fillojmë të shpjegojmë gramatikën që kemi për sot, të tregojmë pak më shumë edhe të themi cilat janë përemrat lidhor. Pra, relative pronouns përkthehet për emër lidhor. The relative pronouns are who, which is used to refer to people, which, it is used to refer to animals, objects, or ideas, whose, it is used to refer to possession, that, it is used to refer to people, animals, or objects, where, it is used to refer to places, and the last one is when, it is used to refer to time. Now, let's continue with defining and non-defining relative clauses. As you can see in this slide, I have divided relative clauses in two groups. The first group defining, the second non-defining. Let's present some characteristics of defining relative clauses. They have no commas, so they provide necessary information essential to distinguish which thing or person we are talking about. Let's take an example. I called my brother who lives in Ontario. Which is the relative clause in this sentence? The defining relative clause. It is who lives in Ontario. Okay, the meaning of this sentence is that the person has more than one brother and he or she called the one that lives in Ontario. Another characteristic of defining relative clauses is that we can use that instead of who or which. Let's take another example. That's the mug which or that I bought in Paris. I didn't know the man who or that was there. So we can use that in both sentences instead of who or which. The last characteristic of defining relative clauses is that we can omit who, which, that when they are followed by subject plus verb. Some examples. Do you like the song which or that I wrote? That's the man who or that I like. In both sentences, we can omit the relative pronouns such as who, which, and that because the sentences are followed by subject plus verb. Let's go on with non-defining relative clauses. The first characteristic about non-defining relative clauses is it provides extra information, and this kind of relative clause is put between commas. It is not necessary to distinguish which thing or person we are talking about. Example, my brother who lives in Ontario is older. It means that I have only one brother and I'm just mentioning that he lives in Ontario. Pra, vendoset midis presjeve dhe mund të hiqet sepse fjalia who lives in Ontario mund të hiqet sepse është informacion ekstra shtesë që edhe pse ne e heqim, nuk prishet kuptimi i fjalisë së vogël, fjalisë bazë. Another characteristic is that we cannot use that instead of who or which. Pra ne nuk mund të përdorim that në vend të emrit lidhor who ose which. Example, these bikes, which cost a fortune, are made in Japan. We cannot use that cost a fortune. The third characteristic is that we cannot omit who or which. They introduced me to John, who I liked immediately. Not John I liked immediately. Open your books, please, on page 122. Here you have 3 texts. So, Unit 8C, Grammar in Use. Which of these 3 texts is an email, a note, or a postcard? Which is formal or informal? Give reasons, please. I've just explained exercise number 1. Let's go on with exercise number 1b. Look at the words in bold in the text, which refer to people, objects, places, time, which show possession. I have done the first one as an example. So, the relative pronoun which refer to people is who. Exercise number 2. Fill in who, where, when, whose, and which. I've done the first one and the other ones as a homework, please. My cousin, who is a journalist, has been all over the world. I have chosen who because it refers to the word, to the noun cousin, which is who is a person. Exercise number 3. Read the examples. Mark the sentences true or false. A. Defining relative clauses. 1. Are put in commas. It is false because defining relative clauses are not put in commas. Exercise number 4. Fill in who, whose, which, where, when. We are on the train platform where your friend said we would meet. I have put where because it refers to the train platform. It is a place. It refers to a place. Okay, it is defining relative clause. I have put the letter D. Okay, the other ones as a homework, please. Let's continue with the clauses of purpose and clauses of result. You use a purpose clause when you want to explain the reason for a person's action. The most common type of purpose clause is to infinitive clause. Let's take an example. Sarah went to the computer lab to print out her research report. This can only be used if the subject of the main verb is the same as the subject of the infinitive clause. Pra, shpjeguam clauses of purpose. Pra, fjalit qëllimore. Tani të kalojmë pak tek fjalit shkak pasojë. Result clauses. You use so or so that to say what the result of an action or situation is. Examples. He speaks very little English, so I talk to him through an interpreter. My suitcase had become damaged on the journey home so that the lid would not stay closed. Let's go on with the student book, page 123. Exercise number 5. Join the sentences, use the words in brackets. The author of the text has provided you an example and the other ones take as a homework, please. Exercise number 7. Join the sentences using the words in brackets. Pra do të bashkojmë fjalit duke përdorur fjalët që ne kemi në klapa me të zeza. Të parën e kam bërë unë, të tjerat si detyrë shtëpie. Të lexojmë të parën. We must take our hiking boots. We can climb the mountain. Ne duhet të marrim çizmet e ecjes. Ne mund të ngjisim malin. Pra, po t'i bashkojmë, do përdorim fjalët so that. We must take our hiking boots so that we can climb the mountain. Ne duhet të marrim çizmet e ecjes, kështu që ne mund të ngjisim malin. Exercise number 9. Choose the correct item. The bus had such a lot of or so much passengers that we couldn't sit down. The correct alternative is such a lot of. Exercise number 10. Join the sentences using the words in brackets. So, you are going to join these sentences using the words in brackets. I'm going to complete the first one as an example for you. Jane got up early. She wanted to catch the first ferry. The word in brackets is so that. Jane got up early so that she could catch the first ferry. And the last exercise is exercise number 11. Write sentences about you and your friends. Tell your partner. Use who, whose, which, where, when, so, such, that, so that. You are going to write some sentences using these words in here. That was all for today. Thank you and I wish you all the best. Goodbye.